Captain Elena Ruiz stared at the holographic display, her fingers drumming a steady rhythm on the armrest of her command chair. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of life support systems, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and faint ozone from overworked consoles. Outside the viewport, the stars streaked by in silent judgment, a reminder that they were light years from home and running out of time. "Status on the array, Jax?" Elena asked, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. She didn't turn, eyes fixed on the incoming transmission feed, a swirling vortex of alien script that twisted like living smoke. Jax Harlan, her chief engineer, wiped grease from his hands on his jumpsuit, his wiry frame leaning against the bulkhead. "Barring any more surprises from those Xeno bastards, the quantum relay's holding. But if the Council's jamming us again?" He trailed off, shaking his head, his usual smirk absent. Jax had a gift for turning tension into quips, but today even he looked frayed at the edges. The comms officer, Lieutenant Mira Voss, hunched over her station, her fingers flying across the interface. Mira was the steady one, the anchor, methodical, with a quiet resolve that had kept them sane through 3 skirmishes already. "Incoming hail confirmed, Captain. It's the full Council envoys. They're demanding surrender protocols." Again. Elena felt a knot tighten in her gut, but she pushed it down. Surrender. As if humanity hadn't bled for every inch of this frontier. The United Nations had pooled everything, colonies, fleets, the last of Earth's stockpiles, to push back against the Vexery Dominion's expansion. But the Council, that smug coalition of elder species, had brokered the peace, only to turn it into a noose. Quotas on human tech, restrictions on warp drives, and now this, a blockade around Sol, cutting off supplies to the inner worlds. "Patch it through," Elena said, straightening her shoulders. The hologram flickered to life, resolving into a semicircle of ethereal figures. At the center loomed High Arbitrator Thaler, his elongated form shimmering with bioluminescent veins, eyes like polished obsidian. Flanking him were representatives from the Krell hives and the nomadic Solari, ancient races who viewed humanity as upstarts, insects buzzing too close to their flame. "Captain Ruiz," Thaler intoned, his voice a resonant echo that vibrated through the deck plating. "Your vessel approaches the neutral zone unbidden. The accord is clear, human expansion halts at the Perseus arm. Transmit your compliance codes, or face interdiction." Jax snorted softly from his corner, muttering under his breath. "Compliance? Right, because starving our colonies is just diplomacy." Elena shot him a warning glance, then faced the hologram squarely. "Arbitrator, we've transmitted our manifest 3 times. The Vanguard carries relief supplies for Epsilon Eridani, nothing more. Your blockade is starving civilians, not stopping aggression." Thaler's form pulsed with irritation, veins flaring blue. "Your species' ingenuity is your curse, human. You replicate our drives, mimic our shields. The accord protects the balance. Divert now or we classify this as incursion." Myra's console beeped urgently, a proximity alert. Elena's heart skipped. "Lieutenant. They're powering weapons, Captain. Railguns charging." The bridge lights dimmed as emergency protocols kicked in, red strobes casting long shadows. Jax bolted to his station, hands blurring over controls. "Shields up. Rerouting power from non-essentials. Life support's gonna get chilly." Elena gripped the armrests, mind racing. They couldn't fight the Council's enforcer fleet. The Vanguard was a scout, not a battleship. But turning back meant dooming Eridani's outposts to famine. The stakes clawed at her. Millions of lives, the fragile thread of human unity. "Open a secure channel to Earth Command. It's time for that contingency." Mira nodded, her face pale but set. "Channel live in 10. "But Captain, if they intercept..." "They won't," Elena cut in, though doubt gnawed at her. The stars outside blurred as the ship banked hard, evading the first warning shot, a lance of plasma that scorched the void where they'd been seconds before. As the transmission cued, Elena leaned forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. This wasn't just a message. It was Earth's line in the sand. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge's consoles a distant buzz against the knot in her stomach. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the orbital sensors, painting the void in jagged lines of debris. Her crew, 3 souls in this metal coffin orbiting a dying world, moved with the quiet efficiency of people who'd long ago accepted the odds. "Status on the drive core?" she asked, her voice steady despite the acrid tang of overheating circuits in the air. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the engineer with grease-streaked forearms and a perpetual squint, didn't look up from his panel. "Pushing 80%, Captain." The gravitic coils are straining, but she's holding. For now. He wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a dark smear. Marcus was the cautious one, always calculating margins, never one for bold leaps without a safety net. Across the bridge, Dr. Sophia Reyes hunched over a holographic display, her fingers dancing through streams of data. The xenobiologist's dark eyes narrowed, tracing the alien signatures swarming Earth's atmosphere. The Council's blockade is tightening. Their drones are adapting, learning our evasion patterns faster than we can update them. Sophia's wit usually lightened the grim shifts, but today it was edged with frustration, her usual quips silenced by the weight of what they were losing below. Elena nodded, forcing her gaze back to the screen. The planet hung there, blue marble scarred by firestorms, cities reduced to glowing craters under the relentless barrage. It had started as a quarantine, the Council claiming humanity's expansion threatened the galactic balance. But quarantine didn't involve orbital strikes or bioagents turning forests to ash. No, this was extermination, cloaked in bureaucratic piety. Their ship, the UNS Endurance, was one of the last relays, a stealth frigate meant to punch through the net and broadcast Earth's defiance. The plan was simple. Slip past the picket, link with the outer colonies, rally whatever fragments of the fleet remained. But simplicity had a way of crumbling under alien tech. Incoming signature, Marcus announced, his voice sharpening. Alarms hooped softly, overridden to minimal volume. Stealth meant silence, even from their own warnings. Drones, 3 of them vectoring from Grid 7. They're pinging active scans. Elena's pulse quickened. The early plan had been flawless on paper. Use the debris field from the fallen defense sats as cover, microjumps to evade. But the aliens had anticipated it, their AI swarms evolving mid-chase. One wrong twitch and the Endurance would join the wreckage. Evade pattern Delta, she ordered, unstrapping to lean over Sophia's station. Reyes, any weaknesses in their formation? Sophia's hologram spun, highlighting the drone's triangular patrol. They're linked, Captain, quantum entanglement probably. Take out one, the others compensate in milliseconds. But, look here. She isolated a node, a faint pulse in the lead drone's core. Overload signature. If we can sync a EMP burst to that frequency, a shudder rocked the ship, the first drone scan grazing their shields. Lights dimmed, consoles flickering as power diverted to countermeasures. Marcus cursed under his breath, hands flying across keys. Shields at 60. If they lock on, won't let them, Elena cut in, her mind racing. Grit had gotten them this far. Human grit, the kind that turned desperation into defiance. Hail, reroute auxiliary power to the forward array. Reyes, calibrate the burst. We're not running, we're hitting back. The bridge tensed, the air thick with the scent of ozone. Outside, the drones closed like shadows, inexorable. But in that moment Elena saw it, not just survival but a spark. Earth's final word wouldn't be a plea, it would be a warning. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge's consoles a faint vibration under her boots. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer colonies, each one a desperate plea cutting through the void. Status on the relay arrays? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Rao, her chief engineer, wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over a holographic display. 3 down, ma'am. The xenojammers are frying the circuits faster than we can reroute power. If we push another surge we might lose the core entirely. Elena nodded, eyes narrowing at the encroaching blips on the tactical overlay, Krell dreadnoughts, their signatures like predatory shadows slinking closer. The aliens had struck without warning, their council's decree echoing in every intercepted transmission. Humanity's expansion was an affront, a mistake to be corrected with orbital fire. But Earth's final message hadn't been surrender, it was a gauntlet thrown. Divert auxiliary power to the forward emitters, she ordered. We broadcast on all frequencies. Make sure they hear it. Rao hesitated, his dark eyes meeting hers. That'll blind our sensors for the next cycle. We won't see them coming. Better they hear us coming, Elena replied, a grim smile tugging at her lips. She leaned forward, activating the comms panel herself. The bridge crew fell silent, the air thick with the scent of overheating circuits and unspoken fear. Across the fleet, similar scenes unfolded. On the battered frigate Endurance, Sergeant Hale coordinated the evac from a mining outpost, his marines hauling crates of refined helium-3, the lifeblood of their warp drives, while laser fire scorched the asteroid's surface. Move it, people. The Krell don't negotiate with stragglers, he barked, shouldering his rifle to pick off a boarding drone skittering over the regolith. Private Lena Torres, ever the quick thinker, jury-rigged a makeshift EMP from a salvaged probe, her hands steady amid the chaos. Hell, this'll buy us 10 minutes. Maybe 15 if we're lucky. He clapped her on the shoulder, his voice a low rumble. Lux for civilians. Make it count. Back on the Odyssey, Elena's transmission began, her words amplified through the jury-rigged arrays, piercing the jamming like a knife. Council of Stars, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of United Earth Forces. You've made a mistake. We built our worlds from dust and determination, not conquest. Your fleets encroach on our sovereign space, but hear this, we will not yield. Our ingenuity is our weapon, our unity our shield. Turn back or face the storm we forged. The words hung in the ether, relayed to every human vessel, every hidden bunker on the frontier worlds. But as the signal peaked, a new alert screamed across the bridge, a Krell interceptor slipping through the defensive net, its weapons hot and locked on the Odyssey's flank. Evade! Elena shouted, the ship lurching under emergency thrust. Rau's hands flew, stabilizing the core just as the first plasma bolt grazed their shields, sending sparks dancing across the deck. In the engine room below, sparks indeed flew, literal ones, as Ensign Kira Patel wrestled with a failing conduit, her suit seals hissing against the vacuum leak. Not today, she muttered, sealing the breach with a plasma torch, the heat searing through her gloves. The Odyssey shuddered but held. On the Endurance, Hale's team sealed the last shuttle, the asteroid outpost crumbling under Krell bombardment. As they broke Atmo, Lena patched into the fleet net, Elena's voice crackling through. We've got your back, Captain, Hale growled into the comm, tell those squid faces we're just getting started. The transmission looped, defiant, as the human fleet coalesced. Not in retreat but in a ragged formation, engines flaring against the stars. The Krell advanced, their hulls gleaming with alien arrogance, unaware that Earth's mistake was assuming humanity would break easily. The first skirmish loomed, a clash of wills in the cold black, where clever traps awaited in the debris fields and sensor ghosts. Elena watched the scopes, her pulse steady. The cost was already mounting, colonies silenced, crews lost, but the gamble was set. If the Council thought this was the end, they hadn't accounted for the fire in human hearts. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the bridge consoles a faint buzz against the tension coiling in her chest. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer colonies, each one a snapshot of chaos, burning habitats, fleeing shuttles, and the inexorable advance of the Vexery fleet. Her fingers itched to override the protocols, to fire everything they had left, but Admiral Rhea's orders echoed in her mind, hold the line, by time for the transmission. Status on the relay array? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Kai Rin, her wiry comms officer, didn't look up from his panel. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his hands flew across the controls with the precision of someone who'd grown up tinkering with salvage tech in the underhives. 80% aligned, Captain. The interference from their jammers is brutal, it's like punching through a storm. But I've got a workaround routing through the asteroid belt's magnetic echoes. Ilara nodded, her gaze flicking to Ensign Mira Solis at Tactical. The young officer's face was pale, her dark eyes wide as she monitored the incoming signatures. Mira had joined the crew fresh from the academies, all fire and untested resolve, but now her knuckles whitened on the console. They're splitting their formation, ma'am. 2 cruisers vectoring toward the array. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Ilara's mind raced through the math. The array was their last shot at broadcasting Earth's defiance to the Galactic Council, a hail of data proving the Vexery's aggression wasn't some border skirmish but a calculated extermination. If it failed, humanity's plea would die in the void, and the Council, those aloof arbiters of interstellar peace, would turn a blind eye. The cost was already tallied. Billions lost, worlds glassed, and her own family on Luna, silent since the first strikes. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, Ilara ordered. Keep us between them and the array. Weapons, target their lead cruiser's engines, non-lethal if we can manage it. Aye, Captain. Myra's response came sharp, her fingers dancing over the firing solutions. A low thrum built as the stalwart S railguns charged, the ship shuddering slightly under the strain of its overtaxed reactors. Kai glanced up, his usual smirk absent. Captain, if we take a hit, the array's done. We could pull back, let them think we've folded. No. Ilara cut him off, not harshly but with the finality of someone who'd seen too many retreats turn into routes. We hold. That's the plan. Earth's counting on us to make this message stick. The ship lurched as the first Vexery salvo grazed their shields, sparks erupting across the bridge. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing like a frantic heartbeat. Mira swore under her breath, adjusting shields on the fly. Shields at 60%. They're probing, testing us. Elara unstrapped, moving to Kai's station. She leaned in, studying the waveform he jury-rigged, a clever loop of human-coded algorithms bouncing signals off natural debris. It was ingenuity born of desperation, the kind that had kept humanity scrapping in the stars when others would have surrendered. How much time do you need to lock the beam? 5 minutes, tops. Kai's eyes met hers, a flicker of that underhive grit shining through. But if they get closer, it'll fry the transmitters. Then make it 4. She clapped his shoulder, the gesture brief but grounding. Back in her chair, Elara watched the tactical overlay. Vexery ships, sleek and predatory, weaving through the debris field like sharks in a reef. Their tech outclassed the stalwartest by leagues, plasma lances that could carve hulls like butter, but humans fought dirty with traps and feints. Fire. Mira called, and the railgun volley streaked out, silent in the vacuum. One shot clipped the lead cruiser's nacelle, venting plasma in a brilliant azure plume. The Vexery vessel faltered, its formation rippling as the second cruiser adjusted course. But they adapted fast. Too fast. A counter-barrage slammed into the stalwart, buckling a bulkhead somewhere below decks. The deck plating groaned, and Elara felt the vibration through her boots. Damage report. Secondary power offline, Mira replied, her voice tight. Hull integrity holding, but we're venting Atmo and engineering. Kai's console sparked, a shower of acrid smoke forcing him to wave it away. Array alignment slipping, damn their jammers. I need to recalibrate manually. Elara's jaw set. The plan was fraying, the early feint of drawing them into the belt backfiring as their sensors pierced the interference. She keyed the intercom. All hands brace for impact. Engineering, reroute auxiliary power to comms, now. A voice crackled back from below, Chief Harlan's gravelly tone cutting through. On it, Cap. But if we push the reactors harder, we might not have engines left after. Do it. There was no room for half measures. Not when the transmission carried not just words, but the raw feeds of Vexery atrocities, cities crumbling, refugees adrift, the evidence to sway the council. The stalwart shuddered again, closer this time, the Vexery closing the net. Kai hunched over his panel, fingers blurring as he patched the array link. Mira fired another spread, buying seconds, her breaths coming in short bursts. Elara watched them, her crew, family. Elena Reyes gripped the edge of the command console, her knuckles whitening against the scarred metal. The bridge hummed with the low thrum of failing systems, red emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the faces of her crew. Marcus Hale was already elbow-deep in a tangle of wiring behind the main panel, his curses muffled but inventive. This isn't a glitch, he muttered, yanking a sparking conduit free. It's sabotage. Someone's been playing with our relays. Sophia Chin stood at the tactical display, her fingers dancing over holographic projections that flickered like dying fireflies. The alien fleet loomed in the viewport, a swarm of sleek, obsidian ships blotting out the stars. Earth's orbital defenses were crumbling, 3 stations already silent, their debris fields glittering like cruel confetti. They're targeting the power grid, Sophia said, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. If we don't reroute auxiliary power to the particle cannons in the next 5 minutes, we're sitting ducks. Elena nodded, forcing her mind to the plan they'd hashed out in the dim hours before dawn. It was a Hail Mary. Overload the incoming dreadnoughts' shields with a feedback loop from their own failing reactors. By time for the ground teams to evacuate the last civilian bunkers. Simple on paper, suicidal in execution. Marcus, how long? 2 minutes if I don't electrocute myself first, he replied, his tone light but his hands trembling as he spliced wires. A shower of sparks lit his face, highlighting the fresh scar across his cheek from the earlier breach. He'd patched the hull himself, refusing medbay because who else would? Elena admired that grit, even as it scared her. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring as another missile streaked past, clipping the wing. Sophia braced against the console. Evasive maneuvers, Captain. They're adapting, jamming our sensors. Elena hit the comms. Hale, talk to me. Got it? Marcus hooped, slamming a panel shut. Power surged, lights flickering back to life. The particle cannons whined to charge, their barrels glowing through the viewport. Elena's heart pounded. This could work. Had to. But as the dreadnought filled the screen, its weapons arrays blooming with lethal fire, Sophia's display glitched. Wait, false reading. The feedback loop, it's inverting. We're feeding them power instead. Elena's stomach dropped. Sabotage indeed. Marcus scrambled up, face ashen. Oh. I triple-checked. No time, Elena snapped, slamming the override. The ship lurched as the loop backfired, reactors screaming in protest. Alarms wailed, bulkheads groaning. The dreadnought's shields shimmered, stronger now, drinking the energy like a parasite. Sophia spun to her. Abort. Divert to shields. Too late. The first volley hit, tearing through the hull with a roar that drowned out everything. Elena was thrown against the bulkhead, tasting blood. Through the smoke, she saw Marcus crawling toward her, Sophia shouting orders into the void. They trusted the systems. Trusted each other. And now the stars were closing in. Elena gripped the console edge as the Endurance shuddered, the hull groaning like a beast in its death throes. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Status, Liam, she barked, her voice cutting through the din. Dr. Chen's fingers flew across his holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill of recycled air. Warp cores destabilizing. That micro-jump we pulled to evade their scouts, it overloaded the containment fields. We've got maybe 20 minutes before it breaches. His tone was steady, but his eyes flicked to Mia, who was already elbow-deep in an access panel, sparks dancing from her tools. Mia Torres didn't look up, her wrench twisting with grim determination. I can reroute the auxiliary power, buy us time. But Captain, if we don't vent the excess plasma soon, it'll fry the NAV systems. We're blind out here. She was the youngest, barely 25, but her hands moved with the precision of someone who jury-rigged half the ship's defenses back on Mars. Brave didn't cover it, she was the grit that held them together when hope thinned. Elena nodded, forcing calm into her limbs. The alien fleet loomed in their sensors, those sleek, obsidian wedges of the Vexery Armada, enforcing the Council's blockade. Earth's transmissions had gone dark days ago, but rumors filtered through. Cities glassed, populations herded like cattle. Their mission was simple: punch through, deliver the payload, make the Council hear humanity's roar. But simple had turned to suicide when their initial infiltration vector collapsed under enemy fire. Options? Elena asked, scanning the tactical overlay. The Endurance was a relic, a human-built frigate retrofitted with scavenged tech, no match for the Vexery's quantum shields. Yet here they were, the last spark of defiance. Liam leaned back, rubbing his chin. We could slingshot around that gas giant, use its gravity to mask our signature. But with the core failing, it's risky. One miscalculation and we're debris. His wit surfaced in the wry twist of his mouth. Or we hail them, surrender prettily, and hope they like our cooking. Mia snorted, yanking a conduit free. Yeah, because aliens love irony. No reroutes holding. Plasma vent in 3. But Captain, sensors are picking up a patrol closing fast. They're on to us. Elena's jaw tightened. The plan had been flawless on paper. Slip past the outer ring, link with resistance signals from Luna. But the Vexery had adapted, their drones swarming like locusts. Their first attempt at docking with a friendly outpost had ended in an ambush, costing them half the crew and the secondary thrusters. Now, limping through the Kuiper Belt's shadows, every second stretched taut. Execute the slingshot, Elena decided, her voice iron. Mia, keep that core from going nova. Liam, plot the course, make it tight. She strapped into the command chair, the harness biting into her shoulders. Outside, the void stared back, indifferent. The ship lurched as Mia sealed the panel, a hiss of venting plasma streaking past the viewports like comet tails. Liam's plot lit the screen, a razor-edge trajectory, skimming the giant's turbulent atmosphere. Tension coiled in Elena's gut. One wrong vector and they'd burn up, or worse, alert the entire fleet. Engaging, Liam murmured. The Endurance dove, engines flaring blue against the black. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then the gas giant filled the screens, storms swirling in ochre fury. Alarms spiked again. They're locking on. Mia yelled, twisting back to her station. Vexery signatures bloomed, 3 wedges peeling from the patrol to intercept. Elena slammed the comms. Evasive pattern delta. Fire countermeasures. Missiles bloomed from their tubes, decoys flaring to life. But the core's instability rippled through the frame, throwing their roll off kilter. The ship fishtailed, grazing the giant's outer layers. Heat warning screamed. Liam cursed under his breath. Trajectories decaying, we're pulling too much drag. Core's at 80%. Mia's face paled as she monitored the readouts. I can't stabilize it from here. We need to manual purge the fields. Someone has to suit up and hit the external relays. Elena's mind raced. Spacewalk in pursuit? It was madness, but the alternative was a spectacular end, their message unspoken. She unstrapped, grabbing her helmet. "I'll do it." "No," Liam snapped, standing. "You're the captain. Mia's smaller, better fit for the access crawl. I'll cover from here." Mia met Elena's gaze, nodding once. "On it. Keep them off me." She bolted for the airlock, toolkit clanging. As the Endurance twisted away from the giant's grasp, Vexary beams lanced close, shearing a sensor array. Elena watched the external feed, Mia's suit vanishing into the hull's underbelly, a fragile ant against the stars. The cost was mounting, another piece of their ship, another gamble with their lives. But surrender? Not while breath remained. The bridge shook with incoming fire, and Elena gripped the controls, steering them into the fray. The Council's mistake echoed in her thoughts, underestimating the fire in human veins. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The view screen flickered with static, showing the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the Council's Vanguard fleet. Marco hunched over his toolkit, sweat beading on his forehead, while Lila scanned the readouts with a furrowed brow. "Structural integrity at 42%, she murmured. "One more hit like that and we're venting atmosphere." "Focus on the engines," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. She'd led scavenging runs on worse odds back on the fractured colonies, but this felt different. The Council's blockade had turned the outer rim into a kill zone, and their ragtag human vessel, the Resolute, was the last hope for slipping through with the countermeasure code. No speeches, no heroics, just get it done. Marco yanked a panel free, sparks dancing like fireflies. "These relays are fried. Aliens built their ships to last, but ours? We're running on prayers and duct tape." He grinned, that lopsided wit cutting through the tension, but his hands moved with precision, splicing wires with a makeshift probe. Elena watched him work, remembering how he jury-rigged a fusion core from scrap during the siege of Luna. Grit like that kept them alive. The ship shuddered again, a proximity alert wailing as another Council drone skimmed past, its energy beam grazing the hull. Lila slammed her fist on the override, rerouting power. "They're adapting, jamming our signature. If we don't cloak in the next 2 minutes, we're sitting ducks." Her caution had saved them before, pulling back from foolhardy charges, but now it edged into urgency. Elena nodded, plotting a course through the densest debris. "Risky, but it might buy them time." "Got it?" Marco crowed, slamming the panel shut. The engines hummed back to life, uneven but functional. Elena punched the thrusters, weaving the Resolute into the floating wreckage. Chunks of alien metal loomed like silent sentinels, the faint glow of emergency beacons casting eerie shadows across the bridge. One wrong turn and they joined the debris. As they threaded the needle, Lila's console pinged, a weak signal from the core worlds. "It's fragmented, but it's them. The Council fleet's repositioning. They're committing everything to the inner blockade." Elena's jaw tightened. The transmission they'd intercepted earlier hinted at a final push, but this confirmed it. Earth's defenses were crumbling, and the code they carried could disrupt the Council's warp inhibitors, if they made it planetside. A drone burst from behind a twisted girder, locking on. Elena banked hard, the G-forces pinning them to their seats. Marco braced against the bulkhead, shouting, "Shields at half. Divert auxiliary power, now." Lila hesitated a fraction, then complied, her fingers flying. The beams scorched past, melting a sensor array, but they were through, the drone exploding against a larger wreck. Panting, Elena straightened. The debris field thinned ahead, stars piercing the void like distant promises. But the cost lingered, comms down, one engine limping. "We're not out yet," she said, eyes on the NAV chart. The inner blockade waited, a wall of inevitability. Marco wiped his brow, meeting her gaze with that unbreakable spark. "Then we improvise. Like always." Lila leaned back, exhaustion etching lines on her face. "And if we fail?" No one answered. The hum of the ship filled the silence, a fragile thread carrying them forward into the unknown. Captain Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the bridge's consoles a low thrum against the tension coiling in her gut. The view screen flickered with static-laced feeds from the outer sensors, showing the Crothian blockade ships arrayed like jagged teeth around Sol's edge. 3 days since their last skirmish, and the enemy's grip hadn't loosened. Hale's jury-rigged shield modulators had bought them breathing room, but fuel reserves were dipping into the red. Another push like that, and they'd be dead in the water. "Status on the probe launch, Hale?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The engineer wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over a holographic panel. Prepped and primed, Cap. That stealth coating you had me slap on should fool their scanners for at least an hour. If Ruiz's data packet uploads clean, it'll slip right through to the Council's relay buoy. He flashed a grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just don't ask me to make it dance the tango on the way out. Lena Ruiz glanced up from her station, her dark hair pulled back in a tight knot that mirrored her focused expression. The packet's encrypted with the diplomatic overrides we salvaged from the embassy logs. If the Council receives it unscrambled, it'll force a review, buy us time before they greenlight the full orbital strike. She hesitated, her cautious nature surfacing. But if the Crothians intercept, it could accelerate their attack. We're gambling on their arrogance. Voss nodded, weighing the words. Arrogance had been the aliens' blind spot so far. The Crothians saw humans as primitives, unworthy of a full war. But that final transmission, the one piecing together from fragmented archives, hinted at something sharper. A warning from Earth's ancient probes dismissed as noise. Launch it, she ordered. We can't wait for perfect odds. Hale punched the sequence, and the deck vibrated faintly as the probe ejected from the ventral bay. On the secondary screen, a small blip streaked toward the blockade's perimeter, its trajectory a sly curve masked by solar interference. The bridge crew held their breath, eyes locked on the feed. Minutes ticked by in silence, broken only by the soft beeps of monitoring systems. Then, alarms blared. Contact! Ruiz shouted, her voice cracking. Crothian interceptor, it's veering right for us. Voss's heart slammed against her ribs. The probe's cloak must have glitched. Evasive maneuvers. Hale, divert power to engines, now. The ship groaned as thrusters fired, twisting away from the incoming bogey. But the Crothian vessel was faster, its sleek form cutting through the void like a predator scenting blood. Laser fire lanced out, grazing the Defiant's flank and sending sparks flying across the engineering readouts. Shields at 60%. Hale yelled, slamming overrides to reroute auxiliary power. His hands blurred, patching leaks in the grid while cursing under his breath. That probe still got a shot, it's past the first line. Ruiz tracked the blip frantically. Uploading now, but interference is spiking. The packet's integrity is dropping, 40% corrupted. Voss leaned forward, her mind racing through contingencies. The cost hit her then. If the message failed, the Council's mandate would seal Earth's fate. No more delays, no more diplomacy. Just glassed continents and silenced broadcast. Keep it steady, she barked. We're not losing this. The interceptor closed in, its next volley tearing through the weakened shields. Explosions rocked the hull, and a console erupted in flames beside Ruiz. She smothered it with a fire suppressor, her face smudged with soot, but didn't miss a beat on the probe's signal. Hale wrestled the ship into a barrel roll, dodging fire by inches, his witty quips forgotten in the grid of survival. Packet sent. Ruiz cried finally, as the probe vanished into the relay's shadow. But triumph soured quick. The interceptor locked on, its boarding beams charging with ominous whine. Voss hit the comms. All hands brace for impact. Hale, get us out of here, any way you can. As the enemy tractor beam latched on, pulling them inexorably closer, Voss felt the weight of it all. The transmission was away, but at what price? The Defiant shuddered, lights flickering, and in that moment she wondered if human stubbornness would be enough to pull them through the fire. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The bridge of the UNS Endurance hummed with the low thrum of failing systems, red emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the faces of her crew. Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk even now, hunched over a sparking panel, his fingers dancing like they were coaxing a wild animal. Beside him, Dr. Lena Corvin, the cautious xenobiologist whose sharp eyes missed nothing, monitored the incoming signals from the Council fleet. And then there was Marcus, the comms officer, his broad shoulders tense as he fed the final transmission into the array. You sure about this, Cap? Jax muttered, not looking up. A bead of sweat traced down his temple, vanishing into the collar of his jumpsuit. One wrong surge and we're ghosts before they even hear our hello. Elena didn't flinch. Her voice came steady, laced with the grit that had carried them through the asteroid fields and the silent drifts of the outer rim. They've blockaded Sol. Pushed us to the wall. If this doesn't shake them, nothing will. She glanced at Lena, who nodded faintly, her fingers hovering over the bioscanner. The alien ships loomed on the view screen, a glittering armada like shards of obsidian against the stars, their weapons primed and unyielding. The plan had been simple at first. Slip through the debris field using the Endurance's jury-rigged stealth drive, get close enough to broadcast Earth's defiance directly into their network. But the Council's interceptors had adapted faster than expected, their energy webs snaring the ship's hull like invisible chains. Now, with shields at 20% and oxygen recyclers coughing, they had one shot. The transmission wasn't just words, it was laced with the data burst from Earth's archives, a digital testament to human history, ingenuity, and unbreakable will. Marcus hit the key. Sending now. Frequency locked on their command node. His voice cracked slightly, the first hint of the fear they all buried deep. The console lit up, streams of code racing across the display as the message propelled outward. Footage of humanity's triumphs from the first steps on the moon to the defiant stands against cosmic storms. Blueprints of weapons never meant for war but forged in desperation. And at its core, the voice of billions unbowed. Alarms blared. A jolt rocked the ship, the deck plates groaning under the strain. Incoming fire. Lena shouted, her caution giving way to urgency as she strapped in. The view screen fractured with the bloom of plasma bolts, one grazing the Endurance's flank. Sparks erupted from Jax's panel, and he cursed, slamming a fist into the override. Drives overheating, stealths blown. Elena braced against the inertial dampener's whine. Evasive pattern delta. Marcus, keep that beam steady. Her mind raced, calculating angles, risks. The Council thought humans frail, primitives playing at stars. This transmission would show them the fire beneath the skin, the same that built cities from dust and fleets from scraps. But as the ship twisted through the void, a new signal pierced the chaos. Not from the fleet but deeper from the Council's core world. Lena's eyes widened. They're responding. Not weapons, it's a counter-hail. The words hung heavy, the first crack in the Armada's silence. Jax wiped grease from his brow, his smirk returning faintly. Well hell. Guess they heard us. The Endurance shuddered again, but Elena felt a spark ignite. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be surrender. Not for them. Not for Earth. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the auxiliary engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge of the Endurance was a cocoon of red emergency lighting, casting long shadows over the consoles where sparks occasionally danced from overloaded circuits. Her crew, 3 souls left after the Council's ambush, huddled around the flickering holographic display, their faces etched with the kind of exhaustion that came from days without sleep. Status on the warp coils? Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her temples. She glanced at Lieutenant Kai Rin, the wiry engineer whose hands never stopped moving, patching feeds with makeshift tools scavenged from the ship's guts. They're holding barely, Kai replied, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. The plasma surge from that last hit fried half the regulators. We can jump again, but it'll be rough, one wrong fluctuation and we're space dust. Beside him, Dr. Mira Solis, the xenobiologist turned reluctant tactician, leaned over the NAV console, her fingers tracing the star map's erratic lines. The Council's blockade is tightening. Their dreadnoughts are vectoring in from sectors 7 and 9. If we don't slip through the nebula in the next hour, they'll box us in. Ensign Theo Grant, the youngest, manned the weapons station, his youthful bravado cracked but not broken. He adjusted a targeting overlay, muttering under his breath. Weapons are down to 20%. 1 torpedo left. Feels like bringing a knife to a supernova. Ilara nodded, her mind racing through the fragments of their plan. The Endurance had been humanity's last diplomatic vessel, carrying Earth's final plea to the Galactic Council, a transmission exposing the aliens' covert sabotage of human colonies. But the Council had twisted it into an act of aggression, labeling Earth a rogue threat. Now, hunted across the void, they were the tip of a spear aimed at the heart of the Empire that had underestimated them. All right, she said, rising to her feet. The ship groaned as another debris field buffeted the hull. We adapt. Kai, reroute power from life support to the shields, non-essentials only. Mira, plot a course through the nebula's densest ionized clouds. It'll scramble their sensors, buy us time. Kai hesitated, his dark eyes meeting hers. Life support? Captain, that's cutting it close. Air recyclers go offline, and we're breathing our own CO2 in minutes. Do it, Ilara snapped, softer than she intended. We've got masks in the lockers. This ship, this mission, it's all we've got left for Earth. He nodded, diving back into his work, fingers flying over the panels. Mira punched in the coordinates, the hologram shifting to show swirling purple tendrils of gas, a graveyard of ancient stellar remnants. Course laid in. But the radiation spikes. it'll fry our comms array completely. Theo looked up, a grim smile cracking his lips. Good. Means they won't pick up our transmission either, until it's too late. The plan had evolved in the dim hours after their escape from the Outer Rim. Earth's final message wasn't just words, it was a virus, a digital payload embedded in the diplomatic packet, designed to infiltrate the Council's central nexus when broadcast at close range. But, getting close meant sacrificing the Endurance, turning her into a Trojan horse amid the fleet. One shot, one broadcast, and humanity's ingenuity would either shatter the lies or doom them all. Alarms blared as the nebula loomed on the view screen, a roiling wall of cosmic fury. Ilara strapped in, the chair's harness biting into her shoulders. Engage evasive pattern Delta. Theo, eyes on those incoming signatures. The ship lurched forward, engines straining against the gravitational shears. Bursts of plasma fire streaked past, the Council's interceptors closing like wolves on a wounded prey. Theo fired the lone torpedo in a desperate feint, its warhead blooming into a false heat signature that drew two pursuers off course. Impact in 30 seconds, Mira called, her voice tight. The nebula's edge clawed at the shields, colors bleeding across the screens, vibrant greens and violets twisting into the black. Kai's console sparked and he cursed, slamming a panel shut. Shields at 60%. Holding, just. Ilara watched the readouts, her pulse syncing with the ship's faltering rhythm. This was it, the narrowing gauntlet where cleverness met chaos. One mistake and the Endurance would join the nebula's ghosts. But as the first tendrils enveloped them, static hissing over the comms, she felt a spark of that human grit, unyielding. Steady, she murmured, more to herself than the crew. We've come too far to blink now. Deeper into the clouds, the sensors went blind, the world outside reduced to a watercolor smear. The Council's voices crackled faintly over open channels, arrogant commands in their layered tongues, assuming the humans cowed and cornered. Ilara allowed herself a tight smile. They had no idea the storm they'd invited. But as the ship shuddered through a radiation pulse, a new alert flashed, structural integrity failing in the aft section. A micrometeor or perhaps a glancing hit, didn't matter. The cost was mounting and the Nexus still waited, a beacon in the heart of the enemy's lair. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard hummed with the low thrum of overtaxed engines, their vibrations crawling up Lena's spine like a warning. She gripped the armrest of her command chair, eyes locked on the main view screen where the alien fleet loomed, a glittering swarm of angular ships, their hulls reflecting the cold light of the system's distant star. The Council had sent them to enforce the quarantine, to starve Earth into submission after the skirmishes over the outer colonies. But Lena knew better. This was no blockade. It was a noose. Status on the warp disruptors? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Beside her, Marcus hunched over the tactical console, his fingers dancing across holographic keys. The engineer was all grit and grease-stained jumpsuit, his usual wry grin replaced by a furrowed brow. "They're holding, Captain," he replied, not looking up. "But the Krell bastards are probing our shields. If they get a lucky shot through, they won't." Lena cut him off, more for her own reassurance than his. Across the bridge, Dr. Ilara Voss monitored the comms array, her silver hair tied back in a practical knot. The xenolinguist had been their wild card from the start, the one who'd cracked the Council's encrypted broadcasts and uncovered their plan to glass the Sol system as a lesson in compliance. Now her face was pale, fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the transmission modulator. "The signal's prepped," Ilara said softly. "But if we broadcast now they'll trace it back. No hiding after that." Lena nodded, the weight of it settling heavier. The crew, fewer than 50 now after the ambush at Luna, had bootstrapped this gambit from scavenged parts and sheer desperation. Earth's final transmission wasn't a plea, it was a promise, laced with data bursts of human history, weapons schematics, and viral code that would sow doubt in the Council's ranks. "You've made a mistake," it would begin, echoing the title of their defiant manifesto. But timing was everything. One wrong move and the Vanguard became space debris. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights strobing across the deck. Marcus swore under his breath. Incoming torpedoes. Evasive maneuvers. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, inertial dampeners straining against the G-forces. Lena braced, watching the view screen as sleek projectiles streaked toward them, weaving through the debris field from their earlier feint. The plan had been simple. Draw the lead destroyer into a trap, use the asteroid remnants to mask their approach, then, slip the transmission through a microjump. But, the aliens had adapted faster than expected, their AI predicting human tactics with eerie precision. Shields at 60%. Marcus shouted. Rerouting power from life support. Do it, Lena snapped. Air grew thinner in the bridge, recyclers whining in protest. She turned to Elara. Can we boost the signal without the jump? Elara hesitated, eyes flicking to her readouts. It's risky. The interference from the disruptors will garble half of it. They'll hear the warning, but the payload, the code, the proofs of their atrocities, might not make it clean. A torpedo grazed the hull, the impact shuddering through the deck like a hammer blow. Sparks flew from a nearby panel, and a junior officer yelped as shrapnel nicked her arm. Lena's mind raced. Abandon the full broadcast? It would buy them time, maybe even a retreat, but Earth's voice would be muffled, just another impotent human cry in the void. No. They had to commit. Full power to comms, she ordered. Marcus, give me everything you've got on those shields. Elara, start the transmission, now. Elara's fingers flew, and the modulator hummed to life. The view screen flickered as the signal pierced the ether, a digital arrow aimed at the heart of the alien command net. But the fleet responded instantly. A destroyer broke formation, its weapons array glowing with charged plasma. They're locking on, Marcus warned. Captain, we need to. The ship bucked violently, secondary explosions rippling along the port side. Lena tasted blood from a split lip, her chair's restraints digging in. Through the chaos, Elara's voice rose, calm and unyielding. Broadcast initiated. 70% uploaded. Outside, the stars blurred as the Vanguard twisted away, but the destroyer pursued relentlessly, its beams slicing through the void. Lena realized with a chill that this wasn't just pursuit, it was execution. The Council wanted no witnesses to their mistake. Her hand hovered over the abort key, but she pulled back. Not yet. The crew's eyes were on her, faces etched with the same fierce determination that had carried them from Earth's burning shipyards. Hold course, she said, voice like iron. We're not done. The transmission ticked upward, 80%. The destroyer closed in, and Lena braced for the endgame, knowing one clever twist might still turn the tide, or doom them all. The bridge of the UNS Endurance hummed with a fragile quiet, the kind that follows a storm's fury. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles pale against the worn leather. Sweat traced lines down her temples, but her eyes, sharp, unyielding, stayed fixed on the main view screen. The alien fleet loomed there, a constellation of jagged silhouettes against the starfield, their weapons arrays glowing like embers in the void. Behind her, Engineer Tomas Reyes hunched over a flickering console, his fingers dancing across patched-together circuits. Lieutenant Kira Novak stood at the tactical station, her jaw set, one hand hovering near the firing controls. You've got the signal locked? Elena asked, her voice steady, though it carried the weight of hours without sleep. Tomas nodded, not looking up. Barely. The relay's holding, but if they jam it again. He trailed off, wiping grease from his brow. The Endurance's comms array was a jury-rigged mess, human ingenuity at its rawest, cobbled from salvaged parts and sheer desperation. They'd lost the forward thrusters in the last skirmish, and the hull groaned under micrometeorite scars, but the message was ready. Earth's final transmission to the Galactic Council. Kira glanced over, her cautious nature surfacing in the furrow of her brow. Captain, if we broadcast this, there's no going back. The Council could glass the planet before we even reach Sol. Elena's lips quirked in a grim smile. That's the point, Lieutenant. They've underestimated us from the start. Time to remind them why humanity survived the stars. She tapped the console, and the view screen split. One half the fleet, the other a direct feed to the Council's chamber light years away. The signal would punch through their blockade, carried on a wave of encrypted bursts and decoy drones. Tomas had called it a Hail Mary hack, clever code that mimicked their own protocols, slipping past firewalls like a ghost in the machine. Static crackled, then cleared. On the feed, the Council's amphitheater materialized, towering spires of crystal, delegates from a dozen species arrayed in holographic splendor. The Vorshi Prime, their scaled faces impassive, dominated the center dais. Elena had faced their envoys before, arrogant, convinced their neural links made them infallible. But now, with Earth's colonies burning and the Endurance as the last line, it was personal. Attention, Galactic Council, Elena began, her words amplified, cutting through the chamber like a blade. The delegates stirred, murmurs rippling like wind through reeds. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of United Nations Space Command. You receive this not as a plea but as a warning. You've declared humanity a threat, quarantined our worlds, and dispatched your fleets to enforce it. But you've made a mistake. The Vorshi Prime leaned forward, its multifaceted eyes narrowing. A synthesized voice emanated from the dais, cold and precise. Human representative, your defiance is noted. Your species' expansionist tendencies violate the harmony accords. Surrender your vessels or face eradication. Elena didn't flinch. Behind her, Tomas muttered a curse as a proximity alert blared, 2 enemy corvettes closing fast. Kira's hands flew to the shields, rerouting power with practiced efficiency. The ship shuddered as plasma bolts grazed the hull, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. We built empires from dust, Elena continued, her voice rising without a tremor. Crossed voids you deem impassable. You see our grid as chaos, we call it survival. Your fleets outnumber us, your tech eclipses ours in scale. But here's the truth you've ignored: we adapt. We improvise. And right now, every human on this ship, on Earth, in the black, we're not fighting for glory. We're fighting for the spark that makes us keep going. The feed showed the council chamber in upheaval. Avian delegate from the Solari Collective fluttered its wings in agitation, while the blocky forms of the Grom enforcers shifted uneasily. The Vorshi's voice cut back, laced with static interference from Tomas's sabotage. Your words are irrelevant. Our armada is already unraveling, Elena interrupted. She nodded to Tomas, who slammed a fist on his panel. Across the fleet's network, the virus they'd planted weeks ago, smuggled in via a captured probe, activated. Human code, simple and vicious, exploiting a flaw in their quantum relays. On the view screen, the alien ships faltered. Engines stuttering, weapons locking up in cascade failures. Kira hooped softly as the corvettes veered off, their formations breaking like shattered ice. Shields at 40%, but they're pulling back. The council's feed glitched, the Vorshi's image fracturing. What sorcery is this? Cease your interference. No sorcery, Elena said, leaning into the pickup. Just human problem solving. You quarantined us to contain a plague of innovation. But innovation doesn't quarantine. It spreads. Your own systems are turning against you now, our gift to the galaxy. Pull your fleets, recognize Earth's sovereignty, or watch your precious harmony crumble from within. Silence stretched across the light years, broken only by the Endurance's creaking frame. Alarms wailed as another volley skimmed past, but the enemy fire was sporadic, uncoordinated. Tomas grinned, sweat slicked. Virus is propagating. Their command net's down. The Vorshi's form stabilized, its voice hesitant for the first time. This is an act of war. Call it what you want, Elena replied. But the mistake was yours, treating us like primitives to be culled. We're equals in the stars, or